covering everything that you need to know in talent experience.
People applying for new positions is like the cherry on top.
With the technology to attract talent.
Recruiters always know their best talent.
The AI just learns to use that information.
Inclusion efforts across the organization.
Tell me what it's like to work for through associate story.
Interviews with leaders in the industry. Talk about what's new in HR tech. What are the hot topics? We're here every week, folks. Weekly look at the latest and greatest topics in HR.
Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, noon Eastern time, and you know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live, covering everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, recruiting, talent management, as well as human resources. We like to say here that it is the greatest show on the internet, better than your favorite podcast. You want to know why? Podcasts are pre-recorded. We get to do this live. We get to interact with the audience. So please ask your questions, chime in. We love to hear from you. That's what makes this so special. Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the team here at Phenom. Our purpose at Phenom is to help 1 billion people find the right job. Now, that's not 1 million. It's not 2 million. It's 1 billion people. And our Talent Experience platform helps us do that. With Talent Experience Management, you are able to help candidates find the right job faster. Employees evolve from their current role to the next one that they want, infinity and beyond, if you will. Recruiters achieve some next level productivity and efficiency, and managers build better teams with data, analytics, and automation. Wow. I needed some help working through that word. All of this is done with super slick artificial intelligence and machine learning. So please head over to phenom.com to learn more if you are interested. Phenom.com has a new look and feel, so maybe it looks a little bit different than the last time. Lots of great information on there on all of the topics that I just mentioned. But today on Talent Experience Live, we are exploring interview management, and not to Google it. I know your first instance whenever you have any sort of challenge in your life is to Google it. Whether the oil change light is on your car, where the local gas station is, what to eat for dinner. But when it comes to interview management, if you do Google it, you'll probably find a lot of great information on how to interview, not necessarily how to manage the interview process. And it's changed dramatically over the years, from everyone from candidates to recruiters, hiring teams, leaders. So if you're truly looking to learn about interview management and the true ecosystem that it is, Google may not be your best option. It'll probably tell you to wear a shirt, maybe even a tie, suit, jacket, and look your best, but that's not what you're looking for. So today we are talking all around interview management. But before we get into that, it is tradition around these parts to start to show off with an icebreaker. So if you are in the chat, number one, let me know where you're tuning in from. We love to see that. And also, number two, I got a fun little icebreaker question for you. When I think of interview management, from my recruiter as a background, I always think of scheduling and trying to balance different schedules where people have time blocks for lunch, they have time blocks for picking their kids up, whatever it may be. And sometimes it can be a bit of a nightmare. So we won't ask you what your biggest scheduling or interview management nightmare is. Instead, I want to ask you what you have scheduled for the weekend. Everyone looks forward to the weekend. It's Thursday. We're right around the corner. So I'd love to hear what your plans are. I personally have a newfound love for the weekend. I have a daughter. She is 11 months old. So I love spending time with her. But also that means that my weekend has slowly begun to get booked up. Everyone wants to see her. Everyone wants to hang out with her. And I am proud to say that this weekend, I have no plans. I am going to potentially take her on a walk with her mother. I may potentially go to the park with them and have a picnic. We don't know, but all I do know is that nothing is slated on our calendar, and I cannot be happier about it. Tom Tate chimes in and says, I'm getting some JT suit and tie vibes today, and I'm loving it. That is not a shout out to Jen Thomas, who is a regular watcher. I believe he's talking about Justin Timberlake there, and thank you, Tom. To even be in the same conversation as Justin Timberlake is an honor. There is Jen. She is having a sleepover with a childhood BFF. Sleepovers are fun. I looked forward to them as a kid. Jen, I'm sure you're looking forward to it now. So please enjoy your weekend. But we didn't come here to talk about what your weekend plans were. This is Talent Experience Live. We're talking about talent acquisition, recruiting, talent management, human resources. So today we are going to dive into, one more. I can't forget any of our guests. Shalene Dye says SLC weekend, hiking with a doggy boy, Mr. Knox. He's my boxer. They love to hike Rose Canyon. Please enjoy that. And Laura says, go explore new restaurants in town. Laura, don't Google it. Just go out and whatever looks good from the outside, go ahead and give it a shot. You know, and Tom says his 7-year-old and him started developing their own video game. It's a great weekend project. Tom, I'm going to leave that one to you. I am not that technical. I can barely get this Google Doc open in order to read my script today. But today we are talking about interview management. I mentioned it at the top of the show. If you Google interview management, you will find great tips on how to interview, maybe in person, maybe from home, in which case you can get away with wearing a pair of shorts like I am right now. But they'll tell you to look your best, to study notes, to have questions prepared. But when we think of interview management, it's really an ecosystem of so many different parties. And today I am delighted to say that we have a very special guest, Sally Hartnell, Director of Product Marketing here at Phenom, to talk a little bit about interview management and how it has evolved and where it is heading in the future. So without any further hesitation, let's bring on Sally. Sally, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Devin. Thank you. I didn't know I was going to have quite the intro there. Thank you for that.
We want to make everyone feel welcome, feel special, give you your moment in the spotlight, just like Justin Timberlake, just like Beyonce. So I am happy that you enjoyed the
I feel
intro
just
there.
like them. I feel just like them.
Of course. Sally, we'll kick things off. First, what is your role at Phenom? What do you oversee? And then we'll dive into the icebreaker question, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. I'm in product marketing at Phenom. I'm responsible for the areas of TXM platform related to talent acquisition. So, we call that candidate experience and recruiter experience.
Awesome. And weekend plans? Yeah, anything fun going on for you?
No, it's nothing exciting. I had a few rooms in my house painted. And if you've done that at all, you know that you have to take the room apart. And so now this weekend, I have to put a few rooms back together.
You have to put it back together, hang everything up on the wall. I hope you have your level, the whole
all
nine.
Of that, the whole 9 yards.
My thoughts and prayers will be with you over the weekend because that stresses me out just thinking about it. Neither of us will probably be having nearly as much fun as Andrea, who chimes into the chat and says, a Mardi Gras party. That sounds like a good time. If you're in Louisiana, down on Bourbon Street, have a great time. If not, pretend like you're there, right? Have some, novelty cocktails, a margarita with a Corona poured over it, whatever it may be. Andrea, I hope you have a wonderful time.
Well, that person did not say they were in New Orleans, so maybe they're just having their own, shindig.
Could be. Hopefully we get to find out. Sally, we're talking about weekends. One thing that rarely happens on weekends, I guess it does sometimes, is interviews, right? And today's topic is all around interview management. So my first question is, why is this important? Why are we talking about it right now?
That's a great question. And even talking about Googling it, you won't find what it is we're talking about. You'll find a lot of things like you were referencing about how to interview for a management role. But, it's been more than 11 years that Phenom has been in the enterprise HR space. We've onboarded more than 500 companies. We've spoken with hundreds and hundreds of chief HR officers. And through all of that, we have come to see and learn that the interview experience and the way to tie those together it has changed. It's changed for candidates. They want a much more consumer-like experience. And something that's streamlined, and really something that's respectful of their time. We know that we have data that says that almost 60% of job seekers have declined an offer due to having a poor candidate experience with the company. And I'll even say that I myself in the past have turned down a job offer because of a negative candidate experience. We know that recruiters really just want to quickly and easily find candidates, get them in front of the hiring teams. They don't have time for a lot of tedious, repetitive tasks, especially around things such as screening and scheduling. You were referencing that earlier. We know that hiring managers can really only spare time to speak with the absolute top-notch candidates for the job. And we know that all the interviewers, all those stakeholders have calendars that are impossible to manage. The hiring team want to be confident that they know, that they're having the right conversations, that they know how to present the feedback to the hiring team, and so on. And then, of course, there are leaders of all that talent, and they're accountable for delivering the best hiring outcomes that they can at the lowest cost.
There's
so
a number of yeah.
No, I was just going to say, if I could wrap that all up, if we want to say, well, then what is interview management? It's just a smarter approach to the overall interview process for all of those stakeholders, because we know that it's an ecosystem. It's a connected ecosystem.
That makes complete sense, right? It is living and breathing, and you have to adapt for the different changes, quite frankly, in nature, the nature that is recruiting, that is talent acquisition, right? And I think of the transition from working in the office 5 days a week to work from home. My calendar started to get filled up with meetings that used to just be simple conversations around the office, right? A quick question, but all of a sudden it's a meeting, right? And that's happening across all departments. So when you mentioned the ecosystem there, it's not just happening with the recruitment team, but it's also happening with the hiring managers, right? And they're having to debrief on candidates and going back and forth. And another thing that you mentioned was a negative candidate experience hindering somebody from moving forward in the process. I could even take it a step further there and say, you could potentially lose a customer if you have a negative interview and or candidate experience, right? If somebody is rubbed the wrong way and you're a consumer brand that sells B2C, you could potentially lose a line item on your books.
It's true. You said a key word there, brand, because the whole candidate experience is a way for organizations to represent their brand. It is a reflection of their brand. And a good reflection, it spreads. And people give that feedback to others that they know in other communities, and a bad reflection also spreads. So really, that is an important aspect of it.
Yeah, and bad reflections always spread faster than good reflections, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with bad news. Yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, this is a complex problem, and I mentioned my experience from pre-COVID to now, where my calendar gets booked up. My question for you is: was this always a problem that potentially we just learned to live with before, or is it becoming more and more complex as more and more of our days get booked up and there's cross-functional relationships between departments?
Yeah, actually a really great question, because and I don't think there's a single simple answer to it. Certainly as technology becomes available and people can realize the value it brings, then they adopt it. Sometimes they don't know the value that technology can bring, or may not even recognize different options beyond the way it's always been done. I mean, whoever thought they needed a camera on their phone? I certainly didn't think I needed a camera on my phone, but now I don't know how I ever lived without a camera on my phone. So I think that's an example of there are solutions to problems, but not everyone is aware of the value that these solutions can bring. So in some ways, yeah, we've just lived with things. I talked about this ecosystem, and that we have seen what's changing there. And part of what is changing is that, in the past, what we've always thought, the way it's been is kind of a one size fits all approach to interviews, and that whole experience. And there's a lot of manual work involved, and truly not positive for any of the stakeholders. So, the candidates are frustrated with how long it all takes. Recruiters, I think, we were talking about this amongst ourselves internally, and said it's like they're playing calendar Tetris. And I realize I'm dating myself by making a reference to the game Tetris. So if you don't know what that is, now that one you can Google and get an answer to, but it's like playing calendar Tetris. For hiring managers, they manually had to coordinate their availability and then a reschedule and so on and so forth. Interviewers kind of played a passive role and manually gave some feedback. And a lot of people just have accepted that this is the way it's always been. But if you look at the evolution of that ecosystem, and when I say ecosystem, I'm referring to the stakeholders mentioned, candidates, recruiters, managers, and so on, to what we know now people want and are doing. So candidates are empowered in the whole interview process. Recruiters offload all the mundane, repetitive administrivia, and build relationships and work on strategy. And hiring managers just can focus on finding and onboarding the right fit. Interviewers are guided and productive members of the process, and leaders are in a position of knowing that they're as efficiently as possible bringing in the best talent, and they're using technology or using intelligent automation.
One thing that popped into my mind while you were mentioning that is last week we had Janine Tkach from Phenom, and she talked about how interviews are a two-way street, right? It's not just the recruiter interviewing the candidate, but it's also the candidate interviewing the company. And when you talk about interview management, I love this definition of, or this example of an ecosystem, because my mind immediately thinks to nature. And then I think about, have you ever seen any of the old Olympic arenas, right? And they maybe, in Eastern Europe or wherever it may be, where nature seems to take over, right? These buildings used to house thousands and thousands of people, but then it's left alone and chaos ensues, right? It's intertwined. All of a sudden nature takes over. And I think when we think about interview management and managing that and keeping it tame, that has an impact on the candidate judging the organization, right? At the end of the day, if they have a bad process where interviews are being rescheduled constantly, people are showing up late, where it doesn't seem, they're expecting to meet with some person and they get swapped out to the last person, that's going to leave a bad impact on candidates and essentially recruiters as well. It's going to make their job more challenging, right?
Absolutely. And as you know, I was heavily involved in the state of the candidate experience work and report that we just came out with. And that candidate experience is critical. I know that there are many components to it, but the interaction between an organization trying to find and bring in talent and those candidates is critical. And that interview aspect of it is one that, first of all, companies have an ability to improve it. It exists. The technology exists, automation exists. There are a lot of things that can be done just to focus on that part of the candidate experience, where the process is efficient and respectful of their time. It's communicative with them. So, I love that topic. I love talking about the state of the candidate experience and how to empower candidates in that process. And certainly having a friendly and efficient interview process goes a very long way. I also like to point out something that I'm not sure is always top of mind when thinking about the length of the hiring process, but I've been reading a lot of research about, especially in our current market where it's been difficult for companies to hire. The longer the process takes, the more likely a candidate is getting multiple offers, driving up how much it's going to take to offer that candidate to onboard. So the longer it takes, the more it'll cost you, not just because of the process itself, but because the candidate is entertaining other offers. And so one way to help manage all of that is to shorten the process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned at the top of it, candidate experience and how much that reflects on really the experiences that we have just as human beings in the world. And I think of Friday nights as pizza night at my house. So maybe I do have some weekend plans. I might have lied a little bit. Pizza will be ordered. But when we hop onto Grubhub, Uber Eats, Caviar, whatever it may be, we look for the times of when it's going to be delivered. And if it is a longer, time after we put the baby down, we may look for a different option. Then that same ideology can be applied to the recruitment process. We think we live in a I want it now situation. We talk about the application process, how it should be easy, resumes should be parsed, all of these things. But it doesn't stop just at those really tangible aspects of a career site that the state of candidate experience dives into so much. It goes throughout the entire process, even into the onboarding process. Maybe when somebody starts their first day, were they greeted? All of that is a part of the candidate experience. And what it seems like we're kind of alluding to here is there certainly are some tools in capabilities that you can purchase and make this process a little bit easier. But is there just one simple tool that could put all of these problems to rest and solve all your things? You can just enter your credit card number and all of a sudden you're going to have a great candidate experience?
Well, I could say Phenom, but I don't know that you can enter your credit card number. But you bring up a couple of different points, I think, here. One is it gets back to that connected nature that you just even mentioned. So after all this interview and onboarding, we're now into another experience of talent. So the candidate experience of of talent can move into the employee experience of talent. And it's connected. I think that might be the most important part, is the connectedness of these things, and not addressing them as siloed kind of transactional processes. So there are solutions that solve for various aspects of interview management, and the one that comes up easily is scheduling. There are solutions to quickly coordinate calendars, but that solution doesn't take into account how to make sure that once a candidate has time scheduled, it's the best candidate, the right candidate in front of the right people quickly. There are so many aspects to the connectedness that you can solve for one component of that and miss the bigger picture of how to solve for each of the workflows happening for the different stakeholders. So a manager, for example, they just want to make sure they are able to quickly build the right team, and they want to be able to get the feedback from people who have been part of the interview process. And those who are doing interviewing want a way to give feedback about the candidates that were brought before them, so that before it goes to another phase of the process, they can weigh in on what was determined to be the fit of that candidate. Were they the right candidates to be bringing into the process, and how does this process iterate and improve over time without involving a bunch of people? That can be automated. Recruiters certainly are central to talking about interview management. In an ideal world, recruiters are focusing on having in front of them a whole set of great candidates and just getting them in front of the hiring managers. And to live in that kind of world, a lot of things need to be automated, like the screening and certainly the scheduling and rescheduling aspect of their jobs. They need a way to prioritize these candidates so they don't just pick a good one to go first in the line, but leave behind the best one. And leaders, of course, HR leaders really want to make sure that that all efficiency is maximized and that they can keep control of the total time and cost to hire.
No, that makes total and complete sense. And Jen chimes in and says sharing notes, right? And so you talked about one thing there, AI and automation. When you mentioned that there are specific scheduling apps that can sort of sort those and those sort of things, my initial question is, yeah, but can you share notes with a hiring manager after the interview through that same interface? And what does that look like? And then how does AI and automation play into that fit score that you alluded to there, and the note sharing and getting a better idea as to what a recruiter is truly looking for at the end of the day that may not be listed on a job description?
Right. I think you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of the most important aspect to the connectedness of the interview experience and all the experiences of the stakeholders, and that's the AI aspect that can be applied and is being applied to get from that old transactional siloed state to a connected ecosystem. So I know, and I hope those who are watching today understand that Phenom's platform is built on top of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it's based on data that we've, collected and refined for over a decade. So we use that data and we use technology to get to the best destination faster. So you can always get from point A to point B without artificial intelligence or machine learning, but it will definitely take you longer and it will definitely cost you more, and your results might vary. So with AI underneath the platform, and when I say underneath the platform, the best AI blends into the background, so we don't even know it's there. And I'm certain everybody watching today is using AI in their daily lives, whether it's on Spotify or Google Maps or Waze or Netflix. The AI just blends right in, and generally people aren't questioning, how did Netflix know that I should watch, this certain show because I've watched these other three? It is just the way our lives are now. And that's the approach that Phenom has to our entire platform, of using AI and machine learning to power all of the experiences, with the AI in the background. And the AI plays so many different roles. So AI offers the candidates a very personalized experience. And it's these candidates, when I go to a website, if I'm the candidate and there's the Phenom AI in the background, I get greeted. I get offered jobs personalized to me. The content that gets served up, whether it's about, hey, read this blog or check out these FAQs, is personal to me. Every candidate has a personalized experience. And at the same time, this AI is learning about candidates and going back to recruiters with what we call a fit score. And this helps tremendously in terms of screening candidates. So now I have basically a prioritized list of the best fit and most likely to be the right person for the jobs that are trying to get filled. So AI is doing all of this in the background and accelerating the process from point A to point B and ensuring that point B is point B. It is the right destination, the best destination, all faster.
Absolutely. And you alluded to a couple of things there. One thing that I wanted to call out was you mentioned that it can save money. Now, my question for you is, obviously, we understand everyone being on the same page, having schedules aligned, having AI find you that best fit candidate is going to save you time. Is it the old adage that time is money and that's why it's going to save you money? Or are there other costs that you could potentially save by being on the same page, by leveraging, artificial intelligence for your interview management, process?
So I think if I interpreted your question right, you're asking me, are there cases where time is not money? Because I do think it always comes down to time. Time is money, literally. So automating something just means that there are things happening faster, such that the humans are doing more strategic work or just more work. And keeping in mind that AI never sleeps. Recruiters have to sleep. Managers and interviewers and hiring teams, everybody sleeps. And when you can embrace automation and AI to get from point A to point B, it never sleeps. It will work while you're not working. And so, yeah, that to me is still that time is money.
No, 100%. And I think there are other aspects of time that certainly come into play that we may not think of, immediately, right? If you think about posting to job boards, right? If you're finding your candidates faster, you can take those down faster. You can save some time that way. We talked at nauseum last year around this time about the employee turnover, the great tsunami turnover that everyone talked about, and a lot of that had to do with mental health and being burnt out in all of those aspects. And when you talk about leveraging AI, right, and helping recruiters find the right fit faster for their roles and getting candidates in the door faster and having a great experience, it's probably going to reduce turnover because they're not going to have as many interviews. They're not going to have as many screening calls and all these sorts of things. And I believe the cost to replace an employee is somewhere around like 180%. So let's say you have a recruiter who is burnt out, right? Who is on the verge of leaving. They have a rough day. They apply someplace else. It's going to cost you a lot more than just, the time aspect there. Last question for you, Sally, because I know you have a very busy day and we got to get back to work on AI and getting everyone situated, right? But we talked about this quite a bit. And my question for you is do you think this is a must-have for recruiters and talent acquisition teams right now? Or is it a must-have 6 months from now? And there's a real competitive advantage if somebody gets on board early and gets acclimated to it.
Okay, that was a lot in that question. When you said, is it something that recruiters and teams need now? I think first it's important to acknowledge we're not talking about one thing. I mean, interview management is many things to all the different stakeholders, and any number of tools and approaches can help along the way. That connectedness is, in my opinion, you can't live without it now and as a foundation into the future. Now, it's good to acknowledge, though, that any organization trying to manage the interview experience across all those stakeholders can just pick one area to start. It doesn't have to be, everything all at once, everybody all in. So if we looked at just one thing, such as scheduling, the payoffs there can be really big. And that would be one area that I would suggest organizations consider, is automating and using AI to, basically act as the scheduler on behalf of recruiters, because the impact of that is shared among candidates and recruiters and the interview team and the hiring managers. They all benefit from that tool. Now, I know we're at time here, but I like to give a real world example. And while I can't name this particular company, we do have a customer, and they're a very large enterprise software company, and they are using our AI scheduling. And in the course of a year, they saved over 24,000 hours of time that recruiters were spending on scheduling. So, keep in mind, a company of that size they were scheduling 47,000 interviews in a year. So not everyone is that large, but let's just put this in perspective. If they saved 24,000 hours of time, That is 3,000 business days, which equates to 600 weeks, business weeks. So 600 weeks is 12 and a half years. So that's 12 and a half years of time saved in 1 year. Now, certainly not every company is as large as this worldwide software company, but even a fraction of that, so even a fourth of that, let's just say, if you save 6,000 hours of time that was spent scheduling, that's 750 days, that's 150 weeks. So even a quarter of that, you're looking at over 3 years. So to me, tangible ROI that benefits multiple stakeholders while moving toward being more and more connected as an ecosystem is just an all-around win and a really good jumping off point.
You said 24,000 hours, and it takes 10,000 hours to master something, right? That's the old saying. I think if I had an extra 10,000 hours, I could be spending my weekend like Tom building video game systems and coming up with that. So it's that 24 times for an organization. You never know what kind of innovation and things will come out of that. Sally, I really appreciate your time. Before we go, any final thoughts, anything you'd like to share, plug before we hop off?
I'm good. I think if folks want to learn more about this topic of AI scheduling, I think Jen, you were going to drop into the LinkedIn chat a link to watch a webinar replay we did in April. That's a really great resource for folks, and certainly they can go to our website and learn more there as well. And at any time, let us know what topics you want to hear about. If you want to dive into anything in particular along this topic, let us know. Let us know in the chat. We'll be on for another minute or so. And we love talking about all these hot topics.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sally. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Best of luck putting the room back together. I know how stressful that could be. I hope to see you, in on Monday with all of your appendages and no hammer incidents or anything like that. But
Right.
We will see you soon. And thank you so much once again.
Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. That was all around interview management here at Phenom, how it can really hinder an organization and the candidate experience, and also how it can help it. And don't Google it, right? You are only going to find how to interview for a manager role if you do Google it. Maybe that's one of the areas where AI is falling a little bit short. But with that being said, if you missed any of today's episode and you don't want to Google the answers to it, you can always catch the replay on LinkedIn. You can catch it on YouTube as well. We do a nice blog recap with the following week that you can always share out to your friends, family, loved ones. Say, hey, look what I learned about interview management today. So you can always catch that at www.phenom.com/blog. Next week, we have a very special episode. We are going to be talking all around boomerang employees. I mentioned during this episode the great resignation, the turnover tsunami, those sort of very doomy and gloomy topics. But it turns out some employees are returning back to the companies that they know and love. So we are going to actually interview a boomerang employee specifically. You don't want to miss that episode or any of our episodes. I said it's the greatest show on the internet. So tune in every Thursday, 12 noon Eastern time. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I want to thank everyone for chiming into the chat. Jen, Tom, Samsad, Maggie, Satyam, Andrea, as well as Bambi, Laura, Shaylin, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Can't wait to see you next week and hope everyone has a great weekend. Thanks.